I'm doing another Palestine video. Uh, yeah, it's just the way it is. Uh, Although I had an interesting interaction a little while ago trying to talk about trans stuff with a person who was not already a TERF, and I think I I didn't do very well. Or I did all right. They were already decided, like they were already a trans activist. So, but it was interesting to be to have to think about what are the core things of this issue and not get caught up in the most sensational stuff, because that can be sort of potentially remedied. Whereas if the issues you are bringing up are like core to the belief system, it's more of a thorough debunking. And essentially, I think the way to do it, to get someone who's already a trans activist, is to focus exclusively on people with autism and homosexual children, because they are the only children they see as having value, whereas girls and women are already kind of not even a thing, so you don't have to protect them or consider them. So that's your little gender critical treat. Now sit down and get ready for Palestine. So this is basically me not having to write different 50 comments on Twitter. I am trying to respond to someone, and we're having like a long discussion, and I just want to be able to post a single thing instead of trying to figure out how to make this all fit into a series of tweets. So, where are we? So the first tweet that I'm responding to, this is in the middle of a conversation, essentially, yeah. I will put the link to the where it happened on Twitter, and you can go back and fill yourself in. I'm not going to catch you up. Okay. So, the person I'm debating said, okay, I see they do claim, as in Hamas, do claim to not have targeted civilians, although they leave a lot pretty ambiguous, similar to the IDF saying they aim for military targets that result in tons of dead civilians. They claim to only have military targets as well, but a whole festival of people shot dead. To which I said, you've been talking about this the whole time as if you know for a fact that Hamas hasn't said anything about October 7th, and that we can obviously infer from this that the perception fostered by Western media is correct, which is that Hamas were cartoonish ghouls trying to rape and kill anything they could. Now we find out that not only has Hamas released a statement denying targeting civilians, they actually say they never deliberately target civilians, and explain the history of how the group came to this position. And this is somehow vague. Secondly, the document is 16 pages long. 4 of these pages are specifically devoted to addressing the events of Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, the response to the Israeli allegations. This includes specifically addressing many of the claims that were circulating at the time, such as 40 beheaded babies and mass rapes. No, they didn't respond to individual videos. This is a statement by a political organization, not a response channel on YouTube. Thirdly, 3,000 to 4,000 people attended the music festival. 360 people were reportedly killed. It's pretty easy to imagine how 2 armed groups with automatic weapons, neither of which expected to be caught in a firefight surrounded by thousands of civilians, could rack up hundreds of deaths without anyone intentionally targeting civilians. Fourthly, The statement from Hamas says that the death toll at the Nova Festival had to be corrected after it was discovered that 200 badly burned Hamas fighters had been mistakenly counted as festival goers. Who had weapons on the day that could burn a body so badly that it was unrecognizable? Who had the Hellfire missiles? If 200 Hamas were mistaken for festival goers and the death toll at the festival was 360, it also doesn't seem far-fetched that a significant number of those Israeli deaths also weren't from small arms fire. The person I'm responding to said, they also leave pretty open room for the fact that some accidents could have occurred where civilians were targeted. They also say some civilians took up arms with the IDF and were killed. Something they don't seem to claim is the idea that the IDF killed most of the civilians. Which I said, they literally say the Al-Qassam Brigade's fighters didn't target civilians and many Israelis were killed by the Israeli army and police due to their confusion. The person I'm debating said they also don't go into depth about what exactly their plan was, or how all those people ended up dead, or explain any of the viral videos, a lot left to be desired. Actually, they explain exactly what their plan was. Did you not read the document? Quote, Operation Al-Aqsa Flood on October 7th targeted Israeli military sites and sought to arrest the enemy soldiers to pressure on the Israeli authorities to release the thousands of Palestinians held in Israeli jails through a prisoner exchange deal. And this is significant because I asked the question earlier, what incentive would Hamas have to kill a civilian over kidnapping a civilian? And you weren't able to give me a reason other than just that's naturally what Hamas or people from Gaza would want to do. And you say that because you're completely ignorant of the history, as we have discovered. You had no idea that Hamas had waged a non-violent struggle over the course of many months in which thousands of non-violent demonstrators were crippled by live fire
from sniper rifles. This means that the IDF were shooting the knees out of thousands of non-violent demonstrators on purpose. In fact, there were more non-violent demonstrators wounded by IDF snipers than there were attendees at the Nova Music Festival, and nobody in the West gave a fuck. Then the IDF did this to Muslim women in the Al-Aqsa Mosque on Ramadan. And nobody gave a fuck. It is clear they do not value Palestinian life, or pain, to a degree that's even close to the equivalent given to other human beings. The idea that the people in Gaza are the ones who need to explain themselves is ridiculous to anyone who has been paying attention, and most people have.
And you were also completely ignorant of the fact that hostage exchange deals had been successful. You kind of just dismissed the idea that that would even be a possibility, when it's a historical fact that in exchange for one soldier, Hamas was able to free thousands of Palestinian prisoners who, unlike the Israeli hostages, who may come back with stories of bad things happening, and many of them don't. Many of them refer very positively to their kidnappers, which drives the Israeli media crazy. But you'll never find the reverse. You'll never find a Palestinian speaking positively. And perhaps that's related to the fact that you will often find Palestinian prisoners being returned with obvious signs of torture, like physical signs of torture. So the fact that they were able to free, you dismiss the idea that the people of Gaza would think that freeing these people was a significant thing to do, that they just wouldn't give a shit. Israel will go crazy, lose their minds over a few hundred hostages, when there's basically no sign that they're being ill-treated. They're in more danger of being killed by the Israeli military than they are of being tortured needlessly by their captors. Because returning happy hostages is a PR victory for Hamas that they have been trying to win. Whether or not you think they're doing it altruistically, that was obviously part of their strategy. And that has not been the case for the IDF in relation to Palestinians kidnapped by them. And it'll be children. Like, I remember gender critical people losing their mind. Remember when there was the My Gay Nana from New Zealand, where that cop came in with a bunch of cops and sort of, what did she do? Like, harassed a disabled woman who made an insensitive comment and traumatized her. Meanwhile, there's like footage of 7-year-old girls getting pulled out of their houses by the Israeli military.
Near Jerusalem, the army would not let Four Corners film inside. I've been behind these walls 3 times. I saw children shuffling across the courtyard, handcuffed and shackled. Some hearings lasted 60 seconds. I saw one boy shout the name of his prison so his mother would know where he was being held. I saw the judge convict some children without even once looking at them. Through it all, what I saw was a conveyor belt of convicted children.
Footage of 7-year-old girls getting pulled out of their houses by the Israeli military, arrested by the Israeli military, and not a word from Kellie-Jay Keen. The hypocrisy is staggering. My printout is bad, but something the operation focused on destroying the Israeli army's Gaza division, the Israeli military, something near the Israeli settlements around... the Israeli military something stationed near the Israeli settlements around Gaza. This is the person I'm debating again. I'm not expecting them to be non-violent, and I'm also against what Israel is doing. I'm against the embrace of the tactic of targeting civilians. That's the issue I see. To which I said, well, then we're all good because that didn't happen. My opponent says, when people circulate images of civilians being killed, their response shouldn't be glory and calls for this. I know you say they weren't targeting civilians, but most people believe they did, and that such an act is righteous. To which I said, basically, no one of importance was circulating images of civilians being killed with celebratory messages. You are employing a double standard that would never be applied to an American. No one would suggest that a person who is flying a support the troops flag at the time Abu Ghraib was discovered was therefore intending to celebrate Abu Ghraib. If it was acceptable to continue to support the US military through its horrors, then you can't cry foul when other people take similar positions. My opponent says, I know you say they weren't targeting civilians, but most people believe they did, and such an act is righteous. To which I said, you often speak with confidence about what other people know or are thinking without any evidence to support it, i.e. Hamas openly aims to kill civilians. People who have been following this issue have a vastly different understanding to people who haven't. The vast majority of the globe supports Palestine. Most people do not believe that Hamas went around raping and killing, even in the West. However, it is true most media figures parroted that line, and most Zionists agreed with it, but that's not the same thing. So when people were supporting the acts on October 7th, it was not with your exceptionally naive understanding of the situation. Added to which, this simply isn't true. For every random person on Twitter, you can find me who says that they specifically supported the killing of Israeli civilians. I will find one politician or otherwise significant person who has called for the death of the people of Gaza. In fact, I challenge you to even find 5 people in total that were or are openly celebrating the deaths of civilians. My opponent says, that's a problem that requires being pointed out when it becomes the norm. Yeah, except when targeting civilians becomes the norm in Israel, and then it requires remembering October 7th. No one was concerned that Kellie-Jay Keen expressed grief over the crimes that were committed on October 7th. What people are horrified and bitterly disappointed about is that she will only ever express grief over situations in which blame can be passed to Hamas, such as women grieving their children lost to bombs, but never over a situation in which Israel is clearly at fault, such as Palestinian children being sexually abused by the IDF.
All these people who are talking about sexual violence never seem to look into it when it comes to being inflicted on Palestinians. Here's a clip of Christian Amanpour talking to a former State Department official.
What happened on October 7th in Israel was barbaric. It was savage.
Yes.
We've heard the stories of rape and gang rape.
At the same time we condemn those atrocities, we have to condemn the atrocities that happen every day to Palestinians in the West Bank. You mentioned sexual violence. A charity called Defense of Children International Palestine drew our attention at the State Department to the rape of a 13-year-old boy that occurred in an Israeli prison. We examined these allegations. We believed they were credible. We put them to the government of Israel. Next day, the IDF went into the DCIP offices and removed all their computers and declared them a terrorist entity. I think it is vital that atrocities not happen to anyone, not sexual violations, not any kind of gross violation of human rights.
It would be interesting for the media to look into or talk about.
Or the practice of IDF soldiers uploading photos of themselves wearing the stolen underwear of Muslim women. She can never say anything about these issues because most of her support base are also Zionist, and any deviation from blaming Hamas exclusively will result in a backlash from conservatives that is as severe as the backlash one would expect coming out as gender critical in a left space. Each side of politics has their stupid neither side of politics are better people than the other side. Each side has their stupid issues that they will go mental over because they know they're wrong. And to think the right doesn't have those is just delusional.
كيف الحرب معك طيب؟
بشع من أول الحرب بشعت حالي. كنت محلاني، كنت هالقد، كنت شجرة بس من اجت اتخرمنا من جزء اتخرمنا من الحرب كلنا. شايف هذا كلنا اتخرمنا. ما كنتش شايف انا، كنت احلى من هيك، كنت اجمل، بس الحرب خربتني. لما كنا بغزة كان كثير قصف، كان كثير اشي لما كنا بغزة، بس لما جينا ما تريحناش.
طيب هيو بدي يجي رمضان، ايش بدك تعملي برمضان؟
لا بروحش، انا بضل هناك اصلا ما فيش كهرباء ولا اشي ولا اكل ولا طحين. لمين اروح؟ وخالتي مسافرة وابونا ماخدين اليهود، لمين اروح؟